Time now for Space Watch, the final episode of the year. I'm joined by Brad Tucker, ANU astrophysicist and cosmologist as well. Let's begin with talk of, the space race, the sort of private version of it, I guess, at the moment. This is with Boeing's Starliner capsule. A big test is happening after a bit of a dodgy year.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been the smoothest ride for both, we saw with SpaceX and Boeing. You know, it's kind of the emphasis, space is hard. It's not the understatement of the century, but they've been trying to go up to what they're hoping is, and this is what's called the Starliner, to actually ferry humans into space. And so tonight we have a very critical test where I think about 11:36 p.m. our time, Eastern time here, they will be launching to the space station. There won't be anyone in it, but there'll be the idea that they want to launch all the way to the space station, have it dock, make sure that's all successful, spend about a week up there, and then parachute back down into New Mexico.
A dry run, basically, for potential tourists one day?
Tourists and astronauts, that's right. Exactly, it's a dry run, and if this all goes according to plan...
So this is the whole thing, the whole loop wants to be completed.
Exactly, you know, they tested all the individual points, they want to make sure it all works, because they do have a contract from NASA to actually ferry humans into space. And, you know, what you're seeing here is actually quite important. That's the landing capsule, and when you saw that red smoke, they hit their target within about 5 meters upon landing, which is actually, it's pretty good, right? But you want to make sure you safely land on it, you don't have any human problems. Look, you know, Boeing hasn't had the best year.
It hasn't.
Yeah.
So how's the company space race going between Boeing and SpaceX? Who's ahead at the moment? So
look, it's interesting. SpaceX did this dry run in March. They did a successful docking, but when they did their final test on the ground, that capsule blew up. You know, and this is something we highlighted, you know,
That's not going to look good in the brochure.
No, that's right. It slowed them down a bit. So Boeing and SpaceX are really close to getting there.
Right. If they nail this in the next week, they're ahead, basically.
They probably will be. They have to do that final safety test at the end, and if it works, I mean, I think either way, SpaceX and Boeing will both be sending astronauts to the space station next year, which is a big change for the U.S. They have not had their own capability to launch humans essentially this decade.
All right. Well, we'll keep it. I'm sure you'll be watching.
Oh, yeah.
36. Set your watches to it. Naming a child can be hard enough. We've got to name 100 new exoplanets at the moment, so they've all been released. What's going on here?
Yeah, so this
nation's got to pick them?
Yeah, because, you know, we always talk about new planets, and they have fairly boring names. So, and there's so many of them. What happened is the International Astronomical Union, so this is like the professional body, it's its 100th anniversary this year. It's most famous for demoting Pluto as a planet. So it was said as, let's choose the best 100 exoplanets, the ones the most interesting, the most Earth-like, and let's give them proper names. So 100 countries were assigned a planet, and then the people in those countries got to suggest names and vote on those planet names and stars to choose what they thought was the best one.
So just drumming up a bit of publicity?
Well, it's twofold, I think. It's not just publicity, but to also promote, you know, some of these are interesting. Australia's planet is a Saturn-like planet that orbits its star every 353 days.
Yan Yan.
Yan Yan. So it's called Yan Yan, is the name of the planet.
And the star is Boobup?
Boobup, yep. And so this is, so it means child and boy.
Right.
So the star is child and the planet is boy. And so it's kind of nice. It's the International Year of Languages, so it's recognizing our Aboriginal history and the ties to the skies. And because this star and this planet was not only discovered by an Australian in Australia about 5 years ago, Chris Tinney, but then got to bear an Australian name that instead of calling it H238283b.
So this is what I was going to ask. So they're naming 100 of the exoplanets.
Yes,
they know a lot of the other ones, and they just retain their boring insert letter, insert number. These ones get nice.
We can actually start calling them just like Earth. You know, instead of us calling a sun D or something blah, 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 D, we can actually call them proper names.
So the planets we know, Jupiter, Mars, etc., were they just named as the person discovered them?
So this is interesting.
The history there?
Yeah, because only 2 planets have actually been discovered, right? Because Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn have always been visible to humans. You can see them with your naked eye. So only Uranus and Neptune...
At different times.
That's right. So only Uranus and Neptune have actually been discovered by one. So there's only been those 2 planets that have been discovered, and they bear the names.
So did different countries have different names for these things, and they became universal?
So kind of. Essentially it was folded into Greek and Roman history, which, and this is kind of the nice point here, is we can get away from just anchoring ourselves to Greek names and have different countries actually give their own names. Like the Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, the 2 main rivers in Burkina Faso were named for its planet and its star. So really trying to show that the world is connected to the stars, which is, I think, a good message this time of year.
Just finally, a new telescope is out to hunt for more exoplanets. Which means they're going to need more names, I guess. Cheops, it's called.
That's right.
What are they looking for exactly, apart from just more planets?
So one of the big things that we discovered recently is there's a whole category of planet that we don't have in our solar system, what we call super-Earths or mini-Neptunes. These are things bigger than Earth, not quite as big as Neptune. And we don't know how closely they are to Earth, like very rocky with a thin atmosphere, or something like Neptune, which is a big gas giant. So we know very little about a planet that happens to be around 30% of every star. So it's a fairly important thing to understand. So this telescope is going to try and find just these super-Earths and mini-Neptunes to actually understand, are they more atmosphere, are they more rocky, or really somewhere in between? Because when we ask these questions, is there life, planets like these are the ones that we tend to find water and water vapor around. So we want to know the potential habitability, the densities, and the properties of it. You know, we can look at Earth and say, well, it's like Earth, so we know what it is. But we can't have anything like this in our solar system to know what does it represent for the greater possibility of life out there.
We've been asking people in politics, 2019, what was the big winner, the big loser? What about space?
Big winner, big loser.
It can be a company, it can be a galaxy, I don't know.
So I would say the big winner, in my case, is black holes this year, right? You know, I love black holes,
though.
We saw the first image of a black hole, but also I think the big winner leading into next year has been private space travel. You know, this is Virgin Galactic. We talked about Boeing and SpaceX. We also have Blue Origin we talked about last week. All four of those companies are going to be set to send humans.
So they've all made really concrete progress.
To send
even though we're not at that level yet, you think they've had the big win by getting really
exactly.
Close to it.
They've had their testing, they've been their support, and I think we'll see it paying off next year when all of these companies for the first time put private humans into space. You know,
Does it work like, you know, if you're a big guy in space, you know a mate of a mate, you'll get a spot on one of these, or is it going to be money?
Yeah, no, it's money.
Right.
Like, if you're a friend of a friend and you have money, you might move to the list.
Right.
You know, Virgin Galactic has a list of 1,000 people who have paid $250,000.
1,000 people have paid that money already.
Yeah. So, you know, but I think we're seeing that turn on investment next year. Next year's big winner is going to be Mars.
Mars.
With all the new rovers being launched to Mars,
Right.
we're going to start understanding it and we'll see it.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting, the big loser right now is the telescopes on the ground with Earth. We know we're trying to deal with our pollution in space. So that's a big thing we're grappling with.
So they're getting less and less effective.
Yeah, because of what we're doing in the atmosphere. So we're going to have to find
Does
ways.
that put us back? Because that's one of our real advantages, isn't it?
That's right. So that's one of the big things that we're trying to work with the international space community is big sectors in Australia could be wiped out if we don't properly mitigate the interference from satellites, which at the same time are very important for our everyday lives. So that's a big conversation that we'll see in 2020 as well.
All right. Maybe you can start a GoFundMe, get you 250,000 that way.
Look, maybe that's going to be a big GoFundMe page. As long you need to go with me, though.
Well, then we need 500,000.
That's right. Well, I mean...
Although we'll find out another way. Maybe we can cycle around Australia because we don't want to take away from the good causes on GoFundMe. But
Agreed.
We'll figure out a way. All right, so we're committed to that.
We're committed to that. Well, maybe we can do a live broadcast from space.
Now, there's an idea.
See, I'm sure...
So then we get the company to pay for it.
Exactly.
All right, I'll see how I go getting that funding. Brad Tucker, it's been a pleasure having you in 2019. We look forward to Space Watch in 2020.
Definitely.